Hello friends, Nayaswami Hriman here as we continue our inspiration from the original lessons of Paramhansa Yogananda. Today we have a little bit to continue from yesterday's lesson number 6 of the Yogoda lessons, in which he Yogananda entitled it The Cure of Nervousness. As Padma pointed out, in modern parlance, we might say instead of nervousness, which I rarely hear anybody use that term anymore, we could say restlessness or anxiety. And so I'm going to finish up that lesson, and if time allows, go on to number 7, which has to do with improving our memory. Okay, so where Padma left off, she gave some of the physical cures for nervousness. The one I laughed at is, do not use sour pickles or acids. I don't know what to make of that. But anyway, moving on to psychological and general things. This is, I find these very helpful. He says, avoid arguing with people. He doesn't elaborate typically in these lessons, but if an argument hovers in the air, see if you can excuse yourself and come back to it when both parties are calmer, if at all possible. The other thing he says, which is very useful also, which is he says, delay acting on your ideas. Delay, you have this brain wave that comes and you're going to do something or say something to somebody. Just wait a bit, okay? Sort of like my mother would tell me to count to 10 before I slugged my older brother, because the result was I'd always lose, but the fight, I mean. But delay action a little after making a resolution. Avoid quarrelsome surroundings. I'm not sure what to do with that exactly. Avoid nervous people, okay? Here's an interesting one. He says, listen to violin music. Well, I love violin music, but not all of it is as uplifting as other parts. But number 8 here is something I think is very pertinent to us in our modern day, which is learn to train yourself to avoid movies and entertainment and images that lodge into the subconscious that are gross, that are grossly violent or grossly sexual. There's so much gratuitous sex and violence in movies nowadays. I mean, most of it serves no purpose to what might otherwise be an interesting or entertaining plot. There's no need to do the whole bedroom scene or to show the guy's arm blown off or this sort of thing. I regret that particular trend. Another one useful, something I do frequently, he says when you go to lie down to sleep, spend a few minutes emptying your mind. You know how you lay down and your mind's just going and you're thinking about all sorts of things. Where is it? Empty your body and mind of thought and sensations. Interesting, not just the mind, but the body of sensations. If you lie down on your back, let's say, for a few minutes, even if that's not how your sleep position, but lie down on your back and just drain your consciousness of all feeling of the body and sort of feel it go as if numb, all right? Which actually happens when in the process of dying. But anyway, just to empty the mind and the body of sensations. He actually says sleep alone. Well, that's a big topic nowadays, but it does have its advantages. He also says something Swami Kriyananda would often talk about in his How to Live lectures and classes. It says, analyze what you fear. Don't just fear it. Don't just mull over the fact that you have a phobia or a fear, but calmly analyze it and see what it is. Find the cause and seek remedy. Do not allow anxiety to rule the mind. Here's an interesting thing. He says, refuse to be obsessed with one idea. Now, we know from modern psychology and that certain types of people have an issue with obsession about, washing your hands. Nowadays, an epidemic is a great obsession to have suddenly. But if you find yourself obsessed about fantasizing about a person or, being upset with somebody or something that you feel like you want to say to them, learn to cauterize, to cut the tendency to obsess on ideas. Hang out with cool people, he says, people with sweet temperament. Don't indulge in vulgar jokes. Well, I suppose none of you do that. Here's an interesting one for some people. Don't talk too much. That's all I got to say. All right. And then lastly, I think one of the most important counsels in respect to our meditation is not to jump up after we practice techniques, but sit in the afterpoise of pranayama, the afterpoise of meditation techniques, of controlling the breath or watching the breath, whatever it might be, mantra, etc. Sit in the silence. Let the mind come to a rest. Yogananda says in his autobiography that Raja Yoga, the practice of Raja Yoga, is intended to still, the natural turbulence of the mind. The natural turbulence of the mind. Very interesting way of putting it. You meditate on that. But let the mind get used to, sort of like sitting on the couch with your best friend, and your best friend, you can sit there and you don't have to talk. Well, your best friend is right here. Sit in the silence with your best friend, at ease, sahaja yoga. Be comfortable within yourself. Be comfortable with yourself. So let's talk then a little bit about memory. It's interesting he writes about this here in Lesson 7 of the Yogoda lessons, but it's a pandemic, what with the overstimulation and the exposure to EMFs, to electronic vibrations of our different devices, not just nervousness and restlessness and overstimulation, but those in turn cause loss of awareness and loss of especially short-term memory. Boy, talk about a pandemic. But he has a couple of physical things to do that are drawn from his exercise system. He says that perform the medulla exercise gently in the night twice before going to bed, but also in the morning, where you rub the medulla in a massage motion. Pull back, exhale. If you know it, so I'm not going to teach the whole thing. Rub the whole scalp and the roots of the hair with the tips of the fingers, and grab the roots and pull and relax several times, and then comb your hair. Isn't that interesting? Then, of course, this exercise, which we in fact call the memory exercise, eat an acid fruit, let's say orange juice, with 2 walnuts and 3 almonds every morning with breakfast. Now that's an interesting one. Be a vegetarian. Avoid stimulants. He does list coffee, but I'm sure there's some fine print in there. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about coffee, but of course he talks about alcohol and other stimulants to avoid, to have a more natural and moderate sex life, if you have a sex life. Sorry. Okay, but I want to talk about the psychological methods, which are very, very, very helpful. He says, perform every action, insignificant or important, with quick, alert attention. I find it interesting that he says quick. I would not have said quick. I would not have imagined that. I would say with more calm, alert attention. Remember, he says, this is a good one, attention is the needle that cuts the grooves in the record of memory cells. I'll read that again. Attention is the needle that cuts the grooves in the record of memory cells. Okay, he suggests that every day we memorize something, a poem. Myself and many of you, or I hope some of you at least, have memorized Yogananda's poem Samadhi. I never thought I could do that. I don't have a great memory for rote memorization, and yet I did with Guru's grace. And then here's another fun one, very useful. Every night before you go to bed, try to remember the details of the day. Okay? Do the same at the end of the month and at the end of the year. Be regular also in your activities. This is common advice given for people struggling with insomnia. Be regular in the times of sleep and waking, working, eating, and don't overindulge in, being a workaholic. I mean, sometimes you in your service to God and Guru, you sacrifice some of these things, it's true, but where you have control of these things, lead a moderate, regular life. Yogananda would say, look at the sun and the moon and the stars, how regular they are. Okay, now here's an interesting technique. Before you fall asleep, and just as you're coming out of sleep, that's called the hypnagogic state. It's an unusual word. And in the periods of somnolence preceding sleep. Anyway, as you fall asleep, as you wake up, command your mind to be attentive to the details of the day. Okay, so I'd like to play a little 2-minute clip from Yogananda and understand that I think the reason the lessons that follow the techniques through lessons 1 through 5, the lessons 6 and 7 are on nervousness and memory, is because those are obstacles to meditation. That sort of jagged vibration of nervousness, which produces the inability to remember. There you are watching Netflix and it should be time to meditate, but you forget to meditate. Somebody wrote to me about that issue just earlier this morning. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras says that the process of the awakening of soul is a process of memory, smriti, to remember who I am. So let's listen to what Yogananda has to say to us today.
When you reach the final realization, there is no difference between any master and any master. For if in heaven, as Jesus Christ himself said, when the disciples are saying, I am great and I am great and I am great, he said, he is the least, is the greatest in heaven. And in heaven there is no captain and assistant captain and soldiers. In heaven, all those that have been one with the Father, they do not suffer from jealousy because they are one with the Father. All those that received him, to them he gave the power of becoming sons of God. So may you all feel now and forever that as the Masters and Jesus are, they have been the examples, the great reflections of God, whom you can follow to know that you are also a potential child of God. All waves of the seas belong to the ocean. There is no difference. Only some wave has drawn itself into the bosom of the ocean and has expanded into the ocean, and some waves are playing with the storm of delusion and getting farther and farther away from the ocean bosom of infinity. So we are all children of God. We are all sons of God, but we have to realize that. And may that consciousness forever and now on be impinged on you. Do not call yourselves sinners anymore. Sin belongs to the past. It is no longer yours. God is yours. And the great masters in Christ are yours. Hold that in your bosom. Thrash that in every thought within yourself. And you will find that you dreamt that you are man, and you woke and found that you are God.
Okay, great friends. So, today's Thursday. It's a beautiful day here on Camano Island, and tomorrow we will broadcast Lesson 8. But what will it be? You'll just have to tune in and find out. Okay, thank you for watching. Tell your friends.